Hi, everybody. Welcome to Overcoming Enmeshment webinars. Today, we are here with Amanda Chinchilla, our couples workshop facilitator, and Erin Wysong-Warren. She is our women's workshop facilitator. And we are here to talk about the couples aspect of enmeshment and how it impacts couples therapy, and kind of going through the first phase of couples therapy in relation to enmeshment. So you can ask your questions in the chat. They do just go to the host and the co-host. Try to keep your questions pretty general. We can't really answer specific situation questions, and try to keep it kind of on theme, but we will try our best to answer any questions that you have. So I am going to hand it over to Amanda.
Hi. Well, thank you everyone for attending this webinar today. Today we're going to try to keep the focus pretty small, talking about the early stages of couples therapy when we're dealing with an enmeshed partner. I also have Erin with me, who's going to help me talk more specifically about the partners piece, because she's got a lot of experience with working with partners with enmeshed adults. And we also want to honor that men or women can be enmeshed. I know that most of the resources we have focused on men being the enmeshed kind of identified client. But so I'm gonna try our hardest to keep it gender neutral. Forgive me if I say men, they're enmeshed men a lot, because I'm used to that being my population, but we just want to put it out there that it can be anyone. So Erin, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, I mean, it could be a male or female partner of an enmeshed person.
So just to kind of start looking at how people generally come, I may have said this in the last webinar. I've been working in the field of sex addiction treatment for 10 years, and about, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years ago at this point, I realized that even though we were moving through healthy recovery and sobriety, a lot of my clients were struggling relationally, and I kept hearing a lot about moms. And so then, of course, went to Ken Adams' materials and his trainings and realized that many of my couples were really suffering from the impact of parental enmeshment and what it does to the attachment within the relationship. So working with Ken, we've developed this couples workshop, which we've done 2 at this point. And so we're not really talking about couples at that point where they're ready to do the workshop today. That's going to be a goal of couples therapy, is getting to that point. This is just the early stages. The first thing that we have to do, and Erin and I will kind of go back and forth on this for a little bit, is just acknowledging that we're even dealing with enmeshment. Like I said previously, my work focused on with couples that were already in therapy. So there were patterns that I was seeing. Very often I would refer, when he's married to mom, silently seduced, refer clients to Ken's webinars and his blogs, and people were starting to see that this was an issue. Now that I've been doing this longer, I get a lot of phone calls from partners saying that they expect this is an issue going on within the relationship. So Erin, kind of, what are the phone calls that you receive from partners?
Yeah, I mean, I get a lot of calls from the partners first because they're experiencing the symptoms, and they're doing the research. Oftentimes they'll, find Ken, call his office, and then come to me and say, my husband has this issue. So I'm like, okay, well, what about you? What's your experience like, and how can we support you?
So in the couples context, what I'm looking for is how to, in a sense, externalize the enmeshment and identify it as the major issue at that point. Like I said, I'm working with clients with lots of other betrayal trauma usually. So we have to really kind of isolate this issue while acknowledging, yes, the other things are going to impact this as well, but how do we really talk about enmeshment, and how do we externalize it so that the couple can start to Well, really have empathy for each other, understand the pain, right? Helping couples get to that space where we can talk about they're both in so much pain from this very specific
Empathy, you were talking about
empathy.
empathy.
Yeah, so that we have to get to the place, creating enough environment. Well, I mean, first, creating that empathy can help the couple get to that state in the first place to where we can actually start addressing the issue. The enmeshed client very often comes in having no idea. If I'm dealing with a couple, they have no idea that this was even part of their family of origin trauma. They may think, I've had the greatest family, I have the greatest mom, while the partner's over here kind of having a completely different experience. Um, Erin, how do you handle that with your clients when they're coming to you saying, yeah, my enmeshed adult partner has no idea that there's even an
Sure.
issue?
Well, I mean, I try to normalize that, honestly, because so many of the enmeshed partners are in denial or unaware, um, consciously, that's going on. So, first thing is to normalize that, and then talk to the partner about how that's impacting the partner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of the reasons why it's so helpful for both members of the coupleship to have that individual therapy. Say they'll have those places where they can process their frustrations too. Um,
I think when they first come in, a lot of people think that the couples counseling needs to be, maybe delayed until the individuals get into a certain place. But I completely disagree with that, because there's not going to be any work on this, building empathy and for the enmeshed partner to understand what their partner is experiencing. And I think that it takes that venue and the couples counseling to bring the person out of denial about the enmeshment. So I try to get them to go very early on, like, you need to get into couples counseling, even if it's not really counseling, it may just be managing check-ins or something, but learning how to communicate, learning how to set boundaries, things like that, that they can do an individual, but they have to come together in the couple session with people like you, Amanda, to work on it.
yeah, and we'll kind of bounce around here in that, what you were saying, Erin, the communication and the boundaries piece, that's where couples can be so powerful. Because if you don't have the tools to talk about these things that are incredibly emotionally charged for both parties, you're going to be going round and round, right? I don't know how many times I've had couples in that have been having the same argument for years regarding the enmeshment and how it's impacting the family dynamics, the relationship dynamics. All of us therapists have different tools that we use for communication, boundaries. I kind of, when I'm working with couples, it's a little combined on one sense, because first they have to have the basic foundation of talking about emotions, right? And so I'm the cliche therapist, as we all are. How does that make you feel? What are you feeling? What are you needing? And in my opinion, nonviolent communication tools are great for that. There's books you can read, there's tons of resources on the internet. Um, there's a website called Grok the World that has a lot of resources for nonviolent communication. I use those with my clients. And it's a starting point just to identify what is happening. How do you feel as the partner, when you experience the mother becoming before you or the family coming before your needs, and also being able to identify what are those needs? Because if you come at someone who is currently enmeshed with their family and you're coming at them with anger and you statement, you're doing this, you've put your mom before me, the enmeshed adult is going to become defensive immediately. Right. I would become defensive if somebody says, you're doing this. So we really need to bring the level of the emotional intensity down, and nonviolent communication is a great starting tool for that.
Do you have the website again? Somebody just asked for that website that you were talking about for that.
Well, there's the basic like nonviolent communication, I think .org, but then there's also Grok the World. It's kind of they have games, they have resources for kids, for adults. It's a great great option out there. They also have an app that's like $1, so I try to get every single client I work with to get that also.
They have nonviolent communication. There's a book.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
book, there's a workbook now. I have a lot of clients who have bought the workbook over the last couple of years, so there's a lot of great resources.
So, I mean, you were talking about like if the partner comes to the enmeshed partner, with anger, the partner's going to get defensive. And so I work with my partners on how do we, use a soft startup, or how can we use a talking boundary that has a lot of containment around it so that your spouse can actually hear what it is that you have to say. Because they will get defensive if somebody's confronting them with anger and a lot of energy like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we can start talking about enmeshment, taking the shame away as much as possible, right? Because very often the clients are experiencing a strong shame reaction, feeling as if something's significantly wrong with them, or now something's wrong with their family, and just trying to cope with that. If you can really break through that and honor the fact that, hey, this isn't something you asked for as an enmeshed adult, and you're reacting to things that you're not even aware of. And we can start educating people on that. That can help create a lot of, helps create empathy for the partner who's taken a lot of unnecessary, very often, abusive behaviors from the enmeshed adult. When they get activated kind of into that state and are protecting the family, very often there's a lot of anger, aggression directed at the partner of the enmeshed adult. And so it's a big ask for the partners too, to say, hey, I need you to be vulnerable. I need you to kind of, we're going to get to your anger and we're going to get to the impact of all of this. But hey, first we have to get to a shared reality on what the problem even is. That makes sense?
100%.
So Erin, how do you manage that piece of it when the partners are so wounded and so angry because they have, in a sense, tolerated this level of relational abuse, I guess I should say?
Sure. I mean, it's kind of like you said, educating them and helping them to realize that their partner came into the marriage already enmeshed, and getting to that piece of like, it's not about you, but it's hurting you, and helping them to not personalize their enmeshed partner's behavior, I think is critical. Because if they can do that and separate themselves from that, then they're not enmeshed with their enmeshed partner, right? So just having the understanding that, okay, this behavior is hurting me. This behavior is not about me. So what do I do with that? And how do I process that? And getting the partner support that they need so that they have other people to talk to and go to besides their spouse, which will help to, take down the level of anger to a place where that they can then really address it. But they really need resources. You can't do this on your own. So, we have women's groups that women can be part of where they're getting the support they need.
Yeah, and there's a real significant lack of resources right now that we have to acknowledge. There are more resources popping up, but we really need to continue to encourage other therapists to start, getting more educated in this area, and also helping people connect. I think that's the huge piece, because you said you can't do this alone. It's incredibly difficult not to personalize for both, for the enmeshed adult and for the partner of the enmeshed adult, because this is relational trauma,
Sure.
which is, I guess where we kind of come to boundaries,
Right.
right?
So, one of the things that I do is help the partner to see that they can approach their enmeshed partner with what it is that they're needing and wanting, versus telling their enmeshed partner, this is what you're doing to me. and this is painful. That may be true, but what is it that they really need? And helping them to identify those things so that they can bring that, this is what I'm needing. And when you do this, I'm unable to have that in this relationship, and it feels unsafe. So learning how to communicate, but also really identifying the needs and wants that they have.
Yeah. And the part that I really have a lot of empathy for couples going through this work is acknowledging when partners do identify what they need and they make those requests, that can very often be overwhelming for the enmeshed adult, right? Because they've spent their entire lives, in a sense, making sure that they meet the needs of their family, right? And now here we go in this setting where we're encouraging partners to no longer be needless, wantless, to speak up for themselves. It can be very destabilizing for even though it's a dysfunctional attachment, it's been an attachment pattern within the relationship. And so just acknowledging that for both parties.
Mhm.
And especially for the enmeshed adult needs support, because wow, she's asking me for this. And maybe I see people in session they know they're not supposed to be upset about this. They know cognitively that is a very healthy request, but inside they are just, their insides are going crazy with 50 emotions at the same times, and they're feeling guilty to the family of origin.
Mhm. You know, one of the things that, helps the partner a lot is to understand that their enmeshed partner has also been betrayed
Yeah.
by the mother, and has a lot of the same painful emotions that the partner has. And I don't think a lot of people sort of see it through that lens that, hey, this guy or gal that's enmeshed was enmeshed by their parent, and that was a betrayal.
Yeah.
Because kids are not supposed to be parenting their parents or meeting their parents' needs. It should be one way, right, from the parent to the child. And I think that a lot of my clients, that really helping them to understand, like, you've both been betrayed.
Yeah.
And how can we get you to align with one another to heal those betrayals and help each other heal.
No, I mean, I agree 100% with you. And that's why I love that we have the same views on this. The partner, it's a big ask, like I said, too, because very often they have felt betrayed, emotionally, psychologically abused within the relationship for having needs. Of course, the enmeshed adult, that's not what they're wanting, right? Very often, so many of my clients who identify with parental enmeshment, they're like the nicest, greatest people you've ever met. They will do anything for everyone. They show up. They're the first to volunteer. It's when it comes from their romantic partner, right? Then that's where we have these overwhelming feelings of oh gosh, trying to think what's the most common one clients say to me. They feel like smothered sometimes too.
Mhm.
My enmeshed adults, or they just feel completely feel resentment instantly, even they know that it's not a healthy reaction. And so as soon as we can get these clients with the foundation, that's why I like nonviolent communication, because okay, we're identifying the emotions, the needs, what needs are being met, what needs aren't being met. Then for boundaries too with the partners, right? Because we're asking the partners to have empathy in a way that the enmeshed adult may not be able, probably won't be able to have for them yet, right? They have to do that own work for themselves, the grief work, understanding how this has impacted them. So we're asking partners to kind of say, hey, you don't have to stick around. If you choose to stick around because this person is actively engaged in his or her recovery, the boundaries that they need, that's kind of the beginning, boundaries for the beginning of therapy. So I have some things that I do with clients. Erin, how do you help partners in those beginning stages when they're at the place where they have the empathy and they want to break that pattern of staying in that dysfunctional engagement? During our couples workshop this weekend, where I was encouraging, they all happened to be women in that one. And the partners, I was telling the women, you don't have to stay in the room. You don't have to stay in this conversation.
Mhm.
If your gut is telling you, oh my gosh, my partner here has been hijacked again into this, we were having this wonderful day. This came up a lot over the weekend and with a lot of my clients, having it be Mother Day, it was Mother's Day, a very triggering day.
Sure. Mhm.
Oh my gosh, here he is again. And am I supposed to sit here in this space and take it and have empathy for him while he's in this enmeshed place with resentment and anger towards me?
Sure. Sure. So, helping partners to identify what boundaries need to be in place for them so that they know, okay, if this is going on or this is what's coming at me, then what I need to do to take care of myself is X, which can be removing yourself from the situation until you can get your front brain back online, right? Um, so the ultimate boundary, knowing what your bottom line is really important. And I talk to partners about that. Like, what is your bottom line? Maybe you have empathy and you know that like there's a solution, but he's not willing to engage in the solution or get the help he needs. And is your bottom line like, I'm not going to stay in a relationship where it's dysfunctional and my partner is not doing what they can to help create a safe emotional environment for this relationship. So we talk about bottom lines, but other boundaries are really important for them to communicate to their enmeshed partner, because it's a way of communicating what they need.
Yeah.
Going off one of the questions in the chat too, do you guys feel like of resentment and that piece of the puzzle with the resentment is something that you initially work on to like level the playing field? We just have somebody asking about how they work through that resentment initially.
The partner or the
Yes, the partner, I believe.
well, we have to look at this very I hate to say realistically, but that's the best word that comes. If you're feeling resentment, you have needs that are not being met, right? And we have to spend some time, that's the individual work for partners and for the enmeshed adult, to go, what is this? What are these needs that aren't being met that maybe I'm not even aware of? I'm angry at my partner for not meeting them, but I don't even know what they are. So it's
Right.
our responsibility first to identify what are those needs, and then look realistically, can they be met by my partner at this time?
Right.
And the answer may be not all the time. Maybe it's a roller coaster in and out, right? I see this with couples. One day it's great, it's beautiful, it's wonderful. We have this beautiful attachment. The next week they come in, one client says something, the other one's triggered. If it's the enmeshed adult that's triggered, all of a sudden they're angry and they're not available again. So then we have to deal with, this was, I guess, kind of my point when I was talking with Erin, is the partner, of course she has needs, he or she has needs. We have to be tuned in when our partner is not available to meet them. Because if we keep going back into that space, we're abandoning ourselves, right? We have to take care of ourselves. And that's why, we're trying to figure out ways to build support systems too for partners, because that's where you got to take yourself out of it and either go to your group, trusted friends, people who understand the dynamic and can have empathy for you in that moment.
Yeah.
That's
A lot of
right.
a lot of resource building happens in my office. Things that they can do to help themselves, identifying people or ways that they can go about, asking for the help they need because they're not getting it from their partner. But it's really hard for partners to accept, like, well, my spouse is, self-centered. Well, okay, because they're working on themselves right now and trying to get to the point where they actually can meet those needs. So it may seem like it's all about them for a while, and it is, right, for their own recovery. But when you've been feeling the impact of that for years, your patience is then. So you need help and support, and making being able to identify what those things are.
And do you guys have experience where both partners are enmeshed? We just had somebody ask about They're kind of going through the heavy lifting of their enmeshment recovery, but they feel that their partner is also enmeshed and that their enmeshment's not being addressed because the focus is on the initial recovery of the enmeshment.
Yeah, this can be a slippery slope. Erin, did you have a first thought on that before I answer?
No, I was just kind of going through my Rolodex in my head of clients and trying to think, and I can't think of one that I've had where both partners that were enmeshed.
Yeah,
Do you have any clients like that?
well, I've had quite a few times where I'm working with the enmeshed adult and they read Silently Seduced, and their first thought is, well, this is my partner's problem too, right? And very often, I mean, it could be. I've had one case in particular where I could think that was definitely the case, where they both probably had similar levels of parental enmeshment. It's like I said, only one where that really stands out. There can be aspects of it, behaviors that look very similar. But when we're talking about parental enmeshment, I mean, that trauma is so significant and so severe. It's it's kind of like how everybody these days might say, oh, I'm ADHD or I'm OCD, but they're really not, right? They may have some symptoms or some behaviors, but the real mental illness with those issues is devastating. So I think it can be a kind of a shame reaction too, to kind of push it back onto partners. Like I said, but we have to be able to have, it very well could be, they could be enmeshed as well. So it has to be ruled out.
Well, and it's kind of like you were hinting at, the enmeshed partner could be projecting some of their own stuff onto their partner as it's a form of denial.
Yeah, and denial is real, and people don't know they're in denial. And that's why we have to really have this kind of space in the beginning where we're not talking about these big, huge relationship issues. We have to start with empathy,
Right.
and creating that space.
I try to educate my partners on the fact that, if their spouse is in denial about this, that denial is just a coping mechanism. It's a way of self-regulating that we unconsciously do. And I think that helps in creating some empathy too, just having that understanding that, our brain is designed to only, let what we can tolerate in. Otherwise, we're going through all these other, ways of trying to regulate. And even if they're dysfunctional, it's still what we're doing. And we're not always aware of it until somebody points it out. Right. And it's better if it's not the partner that's pointing it out.
Definitely better if it's not the partner. One of the things I try to help empower, because very often it's the partner coming in who's very wounded. There's a lot of anger coming towards the enmeshed adult. It's looking at emotion regulation. Erin, you just made me think of that. And we don't really have that outlined as a beginning goal, which I think it needs to be. Just basic emotion regulation skills for both people as well, whether it's mindfulness, deep breathing, guided meditations, yoga, whatever they're willing to do to help bring that level of emotional reactivity down, because it is very often so high and people are in so much pain when they come into treatment.
Yeah.
Do you guys have anything in the beginning stages regarding intimacy and intimacy avoidance with the enmeshed partner?
What takes us back just to the root of parental enmeshment, right? Parental enmeshment, to have a healthy, safe, secure, attached relationship, you have to be each other's number one, right? And in parental enmeshment, that's almost like speaking a different language. How can I make you number one when my loyalty is to my family first? And of course, they're not aware that this is happening. This is happening subconsciously. That's why we have to bring it to the consciousness, right? We have to be able to get the couple to agree on this, and then acknowledge the intimacy hasn't been what either one of them have ever thought it could be, right? That's why this work is worth it, because for the couples that are committed and we get on the other side of this and they have clear boundaries for the relationship, whatever that means for the enmeshed adult, contact wise, we're not talking about, we're never encouraging, fully cut off forever, leave the family forever. The whole idea is how to take care of yourself and create these boundaries for yourself and your relationship. And then you figure out what kind of relationship you have with your family. But to create that space, I use a lot of Stan Tatkin's work, his idea of the couple bubble, Marilyn Murray, circles of intimacy. Those are all tools that you can look to identify how do we create that space, because that's where true intimacy happens. And so we can't have that until we create those boundaries for the individual and the relationship. And I also want to normalize to people, this is not like black or white. This is a roller coaster for a period of time. So you're going to have moments where you're able to, a lot of times the beginning stages, people are having, the deepest level of intimacy they've ever had because they have empathy for each other. They're hearing the impact. That's the starting point. I don't know if that answers. Would you add anything, Erin?
Well, just I'm thinking about, as young children, the adaptations that we make in order to get our needs met in our family of origin. And so that's where the loyalty starts, right? Is that I'm going to have to take care of this other person so that I get my needs met. And so we may physically grow up, but emotionally and consciously we don't grow up. So we're still carrying around that bind, that loyalty bind to this parent who the loyalty is tied to our very survival. Yeah. And so as adults, this unconscious thing is going on and we don't understand it. But that's where it begins. And that's why it's there. That even though we grow up emotionally and unconsciously, we don't grow out of that. And that's why it is a barrier to intimacy in our adult relationships. Yeah. How can you be available for someone when the loyalty is over here? And if I get close to this other person, all of a sudden I feel like they're taking over, just like my mother or father took over. And so there is no space for intimacy.
Yeah, and that's where we often see the partners, because this happens slowly over time and kind of this bubble, right? That's where we see the partners of the enmeshed adult very often just going needless, wantless. They just slowly adapting to this until it hits a breaking point.
Do you guys, in your experience, is it often common for the siblings to be involved with the enmeshment? And how does that change the recovery if you feel that the whole family or the siblings are involved with that enmeshment?
Involved in what's like being proxies for the parent, or what do you mean by that?
Yeah, in this message that I have, the enmeshed partner siblings on top of the parents expect to be involved in their romantic life, and they have jealousy and things like that that they're expressing on top of the parents' enmeshment as well.
So it's like an enmeshed family where it's not just the parent, it's the whole family, and then the partner is out here on a lonely island type. So
that's what I'm gathering, yes, from that message. Yeah.
Sure. So I'm curious what Amanda has to say on this, but I mean, that is just an example of classic zero boundaries in a family system. And so the whole system is enmeshed.
Yeah, I deal with this with couples, one recently where very often my enmeshed clients kind of identify with being the golden child of the family. Like they're the ones that have the great job, have done all the great things, they live their lives in a way to represent the family. And so the family looks good. And one where the enmeshed adult's sister was continuously trying to find someone new for him to date while he's in a committed relationship. because I think the family was so threatened, probably by the health of the new partner. She wasn't tolerating things. She was seeing things weren't okay. She was making requests, and the family definitely went into kind of attack mode. And so that can be and very often partners start to feel crazy. I can't say that enough. They just feel like, am I losing my mind? Is this really happening? Because for the enmeshed adult, they might say things, oh, she just really, my family just really cares about me. They really love me. They're concerned. And so the partner's going over here going, well, I've never been accused of these things in my life. They're telling me I'm this person that I don't identify with, and very often feel like they're losing their mind. So I actually, in couples work, I hear these stories quite often. So yes, it can absolutely happen.
I like the point you brought up about, like the golden child. I see
Yeah.
a lot of that too. And there is a lot of, jealousy and resentment around that
Yeah.
particular role in the family.
Yeah, it's why setting those boundaries in the beginning. And again, boundaries in the beginning can be very different than long-term boundaries. And so we have to look at boundaries as, this is, unless it's a bottom line boundary, which has its own separate place. But these
They're not static.
they're not static. Yeah.
They're fluid.
Mhm.
Like that word.
Yeah. And we're looking at, okay, what was the purpose of this boundary? What need was I trying to protect? Is it working? Is it not working? Do we need it anymore? Can we try to, loosen up on this?
I think it's easier for partners to start doing that when there's some trust and history built up of the enmeshed partner, doing the recovery and prioritizing them.
Yeah.
So,
And I do have a question kind of going back to the way beginning stages of couples therapy. Have you guys had a couple come in where the partner absolutely sees the enmeshment in the enmeshed partner, and the enmeshed partner has not come to that realization or acceptance yet? This person particularly says they feel really alone in all this information, because they see the signs and the symptoms, but their partner has not come to that acceptance point yet. And they just don't really know where to go from this point forward.
sure. I mean, we see that a lot here in my practice, as I'm sure Amanda does. And what my first recommendation to the partner is get in couples counseling. Like both of you need to be in front of the same person. And the couples counselor, can utilize the issues or the problems in the relationship to help bring the enmeshed partner out of denial. Would you say that's fairly accurate, Amanda?
Oh, absolutely. And you have to be able to get into the emotions, right? Because if I, sometimes I'll let clients go for a minute just to see how they argue and give me a better idea of what, these discussions look like at home. But if we can't bring down the emotional reactivity in the room and really have them get in their hearts and just what is the impact of this? Not what they see, what's wrong with the other people, but how is this impacting me and preventing us from having that intimate connection that you can have in those moments where the enmeshment isn't in the relationship, right? That's why people are even coming to therapy, because they do have these moments and they do have these connections that are beautiful. They just don't know how to protect it yet, right? And so that's what we're working for. And in the beginning, and this is where I kind of, circling back to earlier, if a partner puts herself in that vulnerable position over and over and again, if the enmeshed adult isn't able to see it or have empathy over a period of time, the partner is going to have to figure out what she needs to do for herself and what she's willing to tolerate and not tolerate. How did
So
you put it?
in the couples session, it's very helpful to use active listening
Yeah.
in order for the enmeshed partner to, start to see some light. Because if they're just responding defensively, are feeling attacked, whatever. We use talking boundaries, but we use listening boundaries too. This is what I heard you say. Is there more? And, as you go deeper and deeper into it, using listening boundaries that way can really help the enmeshed person truly understand more about where their partner is coming from, as opposed to just fighting and complaining and attacking, because that just brings on the defenses, which when I have a partner client, I'm like, this is why you need to get in the couples counseling room, so that there is somebody there who can help to monitor the dialogue and the way that you communicate and the way that you listen, so that you can actually hear each other. So important.
So important. And very often then I can be the person who is saying, hey, I see your pain. I have suspicions that maybe you had your own betrayal trauma. I like to use that language too, as a child with your mother. And then I will lovingly, as long as it takes, encourage them to read Silently Seduced, or to listen to some of Ken's talks online, Jonathan's talks online. Give people some resources, so they don't feel like I'm attacking them or telling them they're broken or there's something wrong with them. But hey, you've experienced trauma. It's impacting how you relate in a relationship. And this probably isn't, if this is someone where this isn't their first primary, relationship, they've dealt with these issues on some level in their past relationships as well.
Right. And I think it's important too for a partner, if you're working with somebody who is trained and has experience in enmeshment, they're going to help set your expectations for what it's going to take, and being patient, and that this is going to take time. So like, if you want this relationship, then it's going to seem like you're just doing baby steps for a while, so that you're just managing expectations of your client, when you can help them understand what is involved in this. And people who aren't trained in it or don't have experience in it aren't going to be able to help the partner in that specific way.
Yeah.
I know, Amanda, you mentioned earlier that enmeshed people often feel smothered by committed relationships. Do you have any specific pointers for that, on how to prevent that feeling from happening and helping them feel free in their committed relationship?
That's a complicated question too. In the beginning, it's going to feel that way, right? When it's attachment trauma, part of it is having the ability to regulate your emotion, be in touch with what you're feeling and what you need, and being able to kind of sit with that for a minute and go, wait, what's actually happening here? It can be, that's why I said it's kind of a roller coaster, right? Because people aren't going to be perfect. And that's part of managing the expectations. Where as a partner, I want to see, if I'm in a relationship with the enmeshed adult, I want to see them actively working on it, making progress in this. For the enmeshed adult, that's part of the reason why I ask all of my clients who are willing to do this work, especially if they've done the workshops. I make it almost like a rule now, or an expectation that I have for them in this process, that they're going to reach out to other enmeshed adults in that moment to reality check it. Wow, I feel this way right now. I feel completely overwhelmed. She asked me to, I don't know, it could be something so simple. She asked me to cancel my plans and do this thing with her this weekend. Well, that could send the enmeshed adult into complete feeling they're back in their family of origin. They're abandoning themselves. They're not taking care of themselves. So having that reality check where someone who's also done the work can bounce it off with them is, it's priceless.
I agree.
They're going to feel that way. It's going to happen.
So I think we have time for just one more question.
I have just a quick pointer. Somebody asked, how do you find a therapist who does couples work with boundaries within enmeshed families? We do have the Find a Therapist page, and many of the therapists listed do have experience with couples counseling as well. You just have to check their licensing. A lot of the times you have to work within the state that you're living in for insurance and other processing. So just check out that website, or our Find a Therapist page on our website. And then we do have our workshops as well that are really beneficial. Amanda just did one this weekend, actually. So
Yeah, and if you're working with a couples therapist who feels competent and you feel supported, you can always ask them to start reading these books. They can always say no. They can have a boundary and say they're not going to do that. But as therapists, we're hopefully always trying to learn new things and open. So you don't have to completely take your therapist off, out of the loop if
Sure.
it's not helping. Sometimes, I've done consultation work with clients just to give them the resources and, hey, take this to your therapist, see if they can help with this. So there's options, for validation for everybody. It's not enough people are trained in this work yet.
Right.
It's an ongoing process, so you got to keep advocating for yourself and keep looking and reaching out.
I mean, I've worked with other therapists who, are the other half therapists who maybe haven't had experience, and if they're a good therapist, they're gonna get up to speed pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, be open to feedback from the other therapists. I love when my clients let me consult, one of their partners let me consult with their therapist too, because we're not trying to pathologize here. We're trying to say, hey, I think this is the issue, and
Right.
there's hope for this issue. We can get on the other side of this issue. I work with so many couples now that I've known for years, that these are little blips on the radar. Maybe they call, I haven't seen them in a year, and they call me, they're like, oh, we had an enmeshment relapse. We need a little cleanup work.
You know.
Yeah, I need a little tune up, and we work through it. Where in the beginning, it was, occurring multiple times a week. They were disconnected for days, sometimes weeks. They kind of bounce off of it again. So it's having that support, having those tools, starting with just the basics: nonviolent communication, active listening, I statements. If you, Emotion regulation, if you don't start there, you're not going to get to the next levels. So I know it's frustrating when people come in because they want to solve all of these bigger issues because they're in so much pain, but we really have to start with the basics.
That's a good spot to end it at. I think we have some great advice going into this, and ultimately just trying to find your goals individually in those couple sessions, and where to go. So we do have the resources on our website. We have a lot of therapists that have taken the workshop with Dr. Adams in treating adults enmeshed with the parent. And then we do continually have our workshops being scheduled throughout the year. If you do want some individual consultation with either Amanda or Erin or Dr. Adams, that is something that we can also work out as well. You can email me at my email, dradamsworkshops@gmail.com. And we will see you guys next time for our next webinar.